What's the power of AI? What if it could put an end to all the mouse clicks and keystrokes and make room for people to create? What if it could close the pay gap between genders by turning bias into equality? What if it could help the blind achieve more by using sound to give them sight? What if it could help cruise ships become more clairvoyant and car makers be more collaborative? What if a single collaboration between humans, birds, and AI could lead to conservation? What's the power of AI? It's infinite. But it has no perspective of its own, no point of view, no purpose, until people put it in motion, turning imagination into reality. Accenture. New. Applied now.
Hi, I'm Marguerite De Leon, and welcome to Think PH 2018 Day 2. Welcome back. We are celebrating our 5th year of discussing how creative ideas using technology can grow communities exponentially. So this year, we're doing a roundtable series to discuss the theme, Dear Future Self. So how can we future-proof our students today? So we kicked off our discussions yesterday with the question, who are you in this time of creative destruction? So yesterday, our guests talked about the importance of the human factor when it comes to creating jobs and opportunities for the future. So in case you missed it, you can watch it on rappler.com/thinkph or on our social media channels. And you can also tune in tomorrow because we'll have our last day of the Think PH Roundtable discussions also at 4 p.m. So use hashtag ThinkPH on FB and Twitter if you have any questions for our guests. We'll try to address them live here. And thank you to the Think PH partner, Accenture. So today, our discussion will delve into the potential of young Filipinos considering creativity, technology, and the resources available to them now. We want to know, how can young Filipinos build and be part of our country's creative economy? So joining us today are our very special speakers. We have a very special guest. Joining us today is John Hawkins, professor and author of The Creative Economy. He coined the term creative economy back in 2001, and he has written multiple books on the topic. And we also have Amina Aranas Alunan, founding partner and executive director of SOFA Design Institute. Aside from being one of the most recognized accessory designers in the country, her creations are sold in over 100 stores globally. We also have Paulo Mercado, founder of the Creative Economy Council of the Philippines. He is also Nestle Philippines' Senior Vice President for Marketing, Communication, and Innovation. And last but certainly not the least, we have Quark Henares, head of Globe Studios. He is a renowned filmmaker, musician, columnist, entrepreneur, and professor. He was also my professor.
Woo.
Yeah. So welcome. Thank you very much
proud
for
of you,
joining.
girl.
I know, right?
High five.
We've come so far, so long. I know.
From the live journal days.
I know. Oh my God, why did you mention that live? Okay. Anyway, yes, back to business. Okay, back to business. For John, first off, welcome to Manila.
Thank you.
Can you give us a deeper understanding of what exactly is the creative economy?
It's making money out of ideas. Okay, so I start with creativity, which is having ideas, which is what I think every normal person does as part of their happy life. You know, have ideas, think about characters and stories, and that's if you're normal. And then if you use that talent into your work, and you put it into a product or a service or experience, and you fix it and format it, put it in the marketplace with a price tag, and make some money out of it, that's the creative economy.
Could you give us examples of countries that are really good at having that creative economy?
I think the European countries are good. They've got a very strong history of being highly educated, open markets, governments that are aware of the importance of culture. It's very important from the top, President, Prime Minister, very aware of the importance of culture. And also have an international outlook. So Europe and America probably stand out as the main centers. But I go around the world a lot. I'm here now, and I find pockets of creativity and pockets of extremely successful creative economic businesses everywhere in the world. It's happening worldwide. It's a mass movement.
Why the Philippines in particular? What caught your eye about this particular side of the world?
You have a big population. It's a country that, living in Europe, I don't know as much as I should do, because you tend, I think, to orientate yourselves more to America than you do to Europe.
Right.
You have huge talent. You have huge individual talent. You're in an area of the world that is going through huge political, economic, cultural changes. I go to China every 2 months, have done for the last 10 years. I've got businesses in Beijing and Shanghai. And so I'm a bit more familiar now with the region. And I see the incredible speed with which the Chinese are embracing creativity and producing astonishing experiences. And I'm asking myself, what is happening in the Philippines?
Well, speaking of that, I have a question for each one of you. How does the creative economy apply to your industries? You each have very unique industries. Can we start with Amina? Yeah.
Well, for me, the creative economy is at the heart of what we do. Well, one, I have a design school, so I'm into education, and I'm also in the fashion industry. But when it comes to education, like when you said that it's about ideas, it really struck a chord, because for us, I think we really have a strong mission to sort of educate the Filipinos about what design really is. Because we noticed design is especially in fashion, is a very new area it wasn't really seen as something that you take seriously, that you have to take an entire 4-year program for. They used to see creative courses in design as something that you take a short workshop and you'll be a designer overnight. And that's something we've been trying to change. A lot of people think that in order to become a designer or to be creative, you have to learn technical skills. And they think immediately that learning how to operate, let's say, a computer will make you more creative. But what we really promote is that creativity starts in the mind. Creativity starts within you, and you always have to start with that. So for us, we always say that at SOFA, creativity really is king. If you look at our curriculum, creativity in design is always, always at the top of the curriculum, even before technical skills. And of course, there are business skills. Those are part of it, but everything we do is in the service of design and creativity.
Great, thank you. How about Quark, the production arena?
I'm going to thank Paolo because I'm just basically stealing what he just said earlier before we had our meeting. No, but the film or cinema, or actually more specifically video production, is a very complex, I think, creative economy, because we were talking a while ago and I mentioned that there were 60 independent films this year, and then probably around 40 every year that are studio films. And the studio films, of course, I think The House of Us recently beat records as the highest grossing Filipino film.
300 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and then Goya's coming out today. Watch it in theaters. Watch Goyo, please. It's our production. But those are studio films, and with the intent, of course, seeing profit so we can make more films. But 60% of films are made with no intention of making money, and it's all just artistic expression. And I catch myself thinking that as well when people ask me, "Oh, are you going to do Globe Studios movie?" I'm like, "No, I'll just do my own personal little film that won't make money." Actually, even say that. So that's a mindset that kind of has to be changed. And then, as Paolo mentioned earlier, there's also that other side where, everyone in advertising is making the big bucks. That kind of, there's not much need to really, look beyond the Philippines, diba? So it's a very, very interesting creative economy, if you can even call it that now. So, and I think it'll be changing in the next few years. But there definitely needs to be kind of like a overhaul of some sort.
How about you, John, in the academe?
Well, thank you. I'm a professor, but I'm a visiting part-time, unpaid professor. So now I worked in television and film for 30 years. including some of the studios. I mean, Hollywood, mainly Warner Brothers.
Oh, nice.
And Universal and HBO, worked with HBO for a long time. So the thing about those industries, and they are industries, HBO, when I was working for it, was by far and away the most profitable TV business in the world, by a long way. Warner was the most successful studio through the 1990s.
Was it Sopranos era? Or
sorry?
Even, was it Sopranos era or even before?
It was before. It was when Michael Fuchs was just beginning. He was sitting on a lot of money, really relaying sports and movies. And he thought, I'm going to have some of that money to do original programming. He invented the idea of original programming on pay TV. Very clever. I mean, a little bit similar to maybe what you're doing here. So you're looking at a business that is expert in one field, and you're saying we could do something else which is sort of parallel, and the growth prospects in that parallel field are very, very healthy and interesting. So let's have a bit of fun. And it doesn't matter if we fail too much to start with. Of course, you're not going to fail. So,
Shh, my bosses are watching. No.
at the one hand, I get a picture in the Philippines of a healthy economy with some really big companies that are doing really well and making lots of money and helping him to make lots of money. And then I see some people working in the creative economy, the creative industries that are struggling a little bit. They haven't got scale. They haven't quite got the assets, the wealth to fund risk in the way that they should, and they haven't got the assets to fund international development, which is even more risky and even more expensive. So what has to happen here, I think, in some way, is the big corporations to realize that the fundamental underlying facts of the economy is changing away from big corporates employing people 9 to 5 into a much more fragmented, partly what I call invisible economy, which is based on individual talent and creativity and innovation. And if they turn a blind eye to that, they will slowly sink, because we're living in a very, very competitive world, increasingly competitive. And other countries, China is zooming ahead. You're living in China's backyard, and you can't just say they're not there, and they're not happening.
All right. Thank you. And Paolo?
Yes, I will speak on two industries. The first one where I came from, advertising, and then now where I work as Nestle in a marketing role. My view on the advertising as an industry, so it's always associated with the creative industries. It calls the Cannes Lions Festival a festival of creativity. So advertising is very proud to be a creative industry. And it's very comfortable also. I mean, the creative directors in advertising and people in advertising, they actually make a lot of money.
And the advertising industry was the first industry to put that word creative into a job title.
Correct,
Right.
correct. Creative directors, etc. However, it's also the one that is ripe for disruption. Ripe for disruption because people need to are realizing that creativity is not the monopoly of ad agencies. In particular, the looming disruption in the Philippines is that when you look at the ad industry in the Philippines, it is very domestic. 99% of ad agency production in the Philippines is for the Philippines. There are only a minority of work done by ad agencies here that are exported. Now, you can say that that's a comfortable bubble, but in fact, what's happening is that regional clients, Nestle included, and my colleagues in Procter & Gamble, Unilever, are beginning to create regional ads where it's produced maybe in Thailand, but it is actually for airing throughout the region. So there is a disruption that will happen in advertising. On the marketing side, so I wear my other hat now as head of marketing for Nestle. It's more of me trying to convince that marketing is a creative industry, because when you take a look at the top, let's say, creative industries, many of these are driven by the funding of brands. and brands themselves, from the logo design to how we do the sales strategy to the platforms of content that we sponsor, is a major driver of economic driver of creative industries. So it's a little bit of both. So advertising, very successful, very comfortable, but really on the verge of disruption, and marketing needing to understand that creativity is at the core of marketing, not just for P's, but really at the core. I remember the classic Philip Kotler definition. Marketing is the science and art of creating, exploring, and delivering value to the customer at a profit. So even in Philip Kotler's definition, creativity, the science and art, and the creation of value is at the heart of marketing.
I have a follow-up question.
Sure,
So
yes.
you specifically have been pushing for a creative
Yes.
economy in the Philippines. So
Yes.
why is it important for this country in particular, and why is it important for students?
Yes. So the creative economy, actually, my interest in the topic began as a thesis. I was doing a thesis for the Berlin School of Creative Leadership. And I chose the topic of creative economy policy in Asia Pacific. And I started to see, oh, there's one in South Korea, China, Japan, and then I started Southeast Asia. So Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, they all had creative economy strategies. And when I looked at the Philippines, there was no documentation. But we prided ourselves to be among the most creative people in Southeast Asia, but yet we didn't have a creative economy roadmap. So then a group of us started to come together, and we're a group of, let's say, creative leaders, industry leaders, and we formed the Creative Economy Council. So it's just a bunch of us. We incorporated some time ago, and we work with the Department of Trade and Industry. And we've actually put together, if you can see the screen, a roadmap, a suggested roadmap of what it is that we want. So essentially, our goal or our vision is that by 2030, we need to be the #1 creative economy in the ASEAN region. Not all of Asia, just the top 10 ASEAN markets. We need to be #1. Why #1? Because nobody pays attention to #2. You know, so it's just very clear. But how to get there? We've seen 6 key areas that we need to work on, and that's creative policy, that it must be recognized, as John says, at the highest level of government, and we need to have people in charge to map, measure, and prioritize. We need to take a look at the different creative industries. Who has the highest potential to really be successful abroad and to earn dollars as big as or perhaps bigger than the BPO sector? Creative clusters, places where creativity actually happens, like PEZA zones, but for creativity, not for service. Creative cities, creative tourism, creative education. So these are the 6 sectors that we are working on today.
Thank you. Something we discussed yesterday was that it all starts with students, with the school. So I have a question for Amina. As founder of the first specialized design school in the Philippines, how do you think SOFA, which is fully accredited by CHED, has changed the way students learn?
Well, I think, like I said, talking earlier, that, I would say we're 10 years. And 10 years ago, particularly in the field, we started as a fashion school. And when we started 10 years ago, it was always, well, prior to 10 years, my generation of designers, when we wanted to go to fashion school, our only choice was to leave the country. There was nothing available here in the Philippines. The only place we could go all they had were really vocational, technical courses. And so it was really our vision to create a place where design is taken seriously, where it is seen as a serious profession, and you're given an environment that is really, it really sees that there is value in investing time and resources towards creativity. And so, so I think that, in a way, that has changed in the sense that now there are options for the students. Even back then, I'm sure when we were growing up, when we would look for colleges, there was never really options given to us on creativity. When I was looking for a college, I basically I wanted something creative. I wanted, of course, fashion was there. Interior design was one thing, but it was not. I guess the students of our generation were not really fully informed about creative choices in education. So, like, I personally looked for a course that I thought was the most creative in the school I went to, which is Ateneo. But at that time, they didn't have fine arts. So I took interdisciplinary studies because it seemed to be the most flexible. Yeah. So that was, we had limited choices back then. But right now, the landscape has changed. There are also other universities that have also started to really pay more attention to design and creative programs. I've also noticed that I'm very grateful that even in the grade school level, the high school level, of course, the school, the principals, the guidance counselors are also now paying attention to creative careers, and they actually I'm constantly invited to go speak to young children about a creative career, and that was something that wasn't
Didn't
around,
happen, yeah,
didn't
before.
happen in our age. So that's something, and the fact that right now also students are now more willing to commit themselves to a full education program that's really focused on design. And apart from the students, even parents are now more open. Because when I started the school, the common story that I would hear from our students was, I'm studying here now because it's always been a dream. I was never allowed by my parents to pursue a creative path. So I finished college, and now I'm taking another college program because as long as my parents said, as long as you finish a business course, you finish a medicine course, then you can do what you want. That was a common story. But now it's changing, and I really see we now have a senior high school as well, and so we have students fresh from 10th grade, and the parents are open for them to go towards an arts and design track.
Yeah, speaking of that, like at least like a few years back, parents and students were more familiar with the 4-year course. And now, have students over the years adapted the 1 to 2 year program model?
Yes, there are. Those who we do offer the full range. We have the 4-year, the 2-year, the 1-year, the workshops. But what we notice, the students that take the 1-year and the 2-year are those who either have finished college, so many of them had that deal with their parents that they had to finish that, and now is their time to take the short, or they realized too late that they wanted to enter the creative field after college. So then now they have an opportunity. But also, even in the 4-year, there also is an increasing number of students who are willing to go that route.
So do you think there's a future where after graduating from senior high school, students will just immediately take the 1 to 2 year course?
We have had a couple of students that do that. I guess those who are not very, very particular about having a degree program, holding a bachelor's degree. Although, if I would say though, it's not. I wouldn't say it's like the fast way to do it. Right. It's not you don't do it because you want a shortcut. Because there's so much to learn. For example, in our 4-year program, and if you compare it to the other design schools around the world, they will all have double the amount of studios because we have a dean who he's American, so he's the one who's really been pushing for he pushes us out of our comfort zone a lot. And he really compares the Western world of education when it comes to design. And he says, everyone trained in design outside the world get double the studio work that the Filipinos do because of the curriculum that is given to us. So he says, us at SOFA, we really have to maximize our studio. We have to try to double that so that they meet the world standard of studio exposure. So even if they go to the 1 or 2 year program, you will have half the studio work. And studio work is so important because that basically is where all the creativity happens.
This reminds me, I graduated from the Philippine High School for the Arts a long time ago. And this was the time when, when normal four-year courses were the thing. And I remember that even though we had good schooling in the arts when we were in high school, once we got into college, we had trouble finding like a good follow-up course. Because, for example, I took up creative writing. Afterwards, I didn't want to take just another creative writing course in college, right? So that's why I took up communication under Cork. But I was lucky because I was able to do that. But for example, our dancers in Makiling, once they graduated, there were no dance courses in college. They didn't know where to go. Yeah,
Like,
so
for example, if you were to compare our, the education we have in the Philippines compared to the Western world, here, because of the curriculum, you would have to start with basic, like basic illustration, basic
Right,
everything,
yeah.
all the basic technical skills. Although in the Western world, they are expected to come in with
Having
those
known-
basic skills because they do foundation classes probably during the summer, and that's part. But here, you're expected to learn it. And in some schools, they won't teach you the creative courses, the majors, until your third or fourth year of college.
If I may
Sure.
just build on that conversation, there's also the challenge of assumptions on what is expected of higher education and the structure of our courses. And this is especially true for our alma mater at Ateneo, which has a particular perspective that you have to have a solid base of, let's say, liberal arts, philosophy, theology, maths, etc. And you take a lot of heavy fundamental courses that you will never use as a creative.
Right.
And I'm comparing that now to what my son is in performing arts. He's studying in Boston. And it's exactly as you said. They take and they're very focused on what is the creative sector that they need to study. And it's not about theory, it's about doing. A lot of conservatory work, a lot of collaboration work, a lot of really learning from experience. But then you're challenged. You're challenged to read 2 to 3 plays a week and then critique and then dive in. But then they don't burden you with Math 18. They don't burden you with Math 21 if you are a performing arts major. So I think those are the things that are quite, exactly. And John, you had the perspective also that you shared the other day on short courses as well, and the importance of short courses.
I mean, I think you used the word conservatoire,
Yes.
and we use that word a lot in the UK and Europe, and the presence of real world-class conservatoires. I used to be chairman of the London Film School, which is one of the top 3 film schools in London. We have fantastic art schools. We have fantastic design schools. We have whatever, and it's all practice. At the London Film School, every student, every term, 2-year course, makes a film. They have a dissertation as part of the qualification. It is so unimportant. It's all about the craft, the technique of making a film. We don't train directors. Everybody has to go through everything. Has to assemble a camera, clean a camera, take it apart, so on and so forth. I forgot your question. What was your question?
On the importance or the growing prominence of short
courses.
programs.
Yeah, absolutely. We are moving towards having short part-time courses. The BA, the MA, all film schools in the UK are master MA level courses. We're still doing that, but all of us are moving towards short form, short term, either 5 weeks, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, a month, very intensive for one week, whatever people in that particular industry, at that particular level of competence, whatever fits into their daily lives, their personal lives and their working lives. Very, very optimistic. We've got access to fantastic teachers, and we are a sort of platform, physical platform, to enable the teachers to work with the students. And however we can do it, we can do it. And I think I have this phrase about the capacity to learn, which is a critical asset of the creative person. And university, school university, is just the beginning of your capacity to learn. Creative people have to go on learning all through their lives. And once they stop learning, they die, actually. They wither away. So a creative city or a creative ecology is a place where day after day, hour after hour, the brain is learning while you're working, while you're not, whatever. You're learning, you're mixing with people who you respect, good word here, and who are better than you. I have a phrase that in the old conventional economy, the idea was to go work for someone who was not as good as you, because then you would get promoted. Okay, that was the deal. If you were better than the next guy, you would get promoted up the hierarchy faster. In the creative economy, you've got to go work with people who are cleverer than you, because then you'll learn and you'll develop. And it's a fundamental change. And this ability, this capacity, this passion to learn, not in a very sort of big, capital L way, informal way, very, very, very important.
And I kind of see that now in independent filmmaking here in the Philippines. So I have a question for Quark. Creating content is now very democratized. So now you see a lot of stuff on social media made by people who didn't necessarily go to film school, and so the quality is not exactly like the best, but it gets a lot of traction. So what can you say about that?
I think that's perfect. I think like when back in the early days of teaching, the number one question that would always be asked is, what advice do you give to budding filmmakers, the budding forever? And I would always tell them, like, don't be a budding filmmaker, just be a filmmaker. You have no excuse. You have a DV camera, you have a crew.
Yep.
But now
Do
people
it.
are
Just go and
making
do it.
films with their iPhones,
Yep.
right? They're like Unsane with
I
Claire
just
Foy.
commissioned 2 films made with an
Yeah,
iPhone.
yeah.
Yep.
So and it's brilliant, and it's
Good.
great. And even like these things where the kids open toys,
The
like
unboxing.
yeah, $70,000 a year, the one in Bulacan. So like Scarlett, we're gonna make some money. My little sister. No, but yeah. So it's not about how slick it is anymore. It's not about how many effects you have. It's really about the ideas that you have, the personality in front of the camera, how you convey these ideas, and I think that's great. And it's not, now it's not just about being a filmmaker. And before, the idea was like the big dream was to make a 2-hour film, and now people are realizing, no, I can totally be happy making 7-minute short vlogs. I can be a showrunner and make a 60-episode series. I can even be with the Instagram TV or whatever, just like a really, really micro filmmaker. And there's so many windows now where you can express yourself through video, and that's awesome.
For Filipinos in particular, do you think like the Philippines can be like one of the top creative hubs?
Definitely. I think the world is starting to take notice. I mean, right now, of course, you have Brillante Mendoza and Love Diaz and Raya Martin and a few other filmmakers, whereas maybe 15 years ago, there wasn't really, people were still talking about Broca and Bernal, but now, there's such a big stage for the Philippines, and even on Netflix, stuff like Birdshot is doing really well. And I think people are starting to take notice. Right now, though, the reputation of the Philippines, I don't think this is a good reputation, really, is we can get things done really cheaply.
Right.
So people like Thailand will send people over, like, see how fast and cheap. Filipinos can make things, which is, of course, a skill, an advantage, but I don't want us to be known for that. So I think, yeah, go ahead.
May I build on Quark's point? I think from a talent-based point of view, we're certainly there. What we don't have is the platform for production. We don't have open production studios, where people can come in. I mean, the sound stages that we have are owned by the big groups, But if you really want to make a movie and you want to, let's say, rent a quality sound stage, there are very, very few choices. And all of our production also in terms of, or most of them, in terms of tax incentives, they don't really enjoy tax incentives, even if they're meant for foreign markets. So that's where our council is trying to put together, let's say, framework strategies in terms of defining, let's say, creative clusters. Where can, for example, a film creative production cluster be? Where you have those for rent sound stages all together, or common editing suites over there, or prop houses. And then you can make that PEZA certified so that everybody who does production there enjoys automatically the DTI incentives. So those things don't exist. So, but
It's a bit ironic when you have Hollywood gives tax incentives.
Yes.
London gives tax incentives.
Yes.
And we both
Canada.
have quite healthy industries.
Yes.
And the Philippines, which is good, but it could be better, does not have a tax incentive.
Yes.
It's a bit ironic, though.
Yes. So those are the things where the Creative Economy Council now looks at it from a helicopter view. We've got the talent, but have we actually lined up everything possible to make those industries really be competitive? To give them a platform, to give them scale, and to give them the tailwind to be able to really compete with other countries.
What can you say about the fact that a lot of Filipino families still think that STEM education should be prioritized over the arts?
Well, it's two things. So there's science, technology, engineering, and maths. Very important as opposed to STREAM, including reading and the arts. My point of view on this one is actually even STEM is okay for so long as it's creative. I think the key point for me is that creativity is not just in the arts. Creativity is also in the sciences, but it needs to be the sciences that actually innovates. And on the other hand, art education and art can sometimes be very uncreative. If you teach essentially art, and I'll exaggerate a bit, which is like color by numbers art, where you teach only technique and it's very rigid, and essentially the way to pass is to do what your professor says, and you don't encourage originality and creative thinking, that will also fail. So for me, while yes, ideally it will be STREAM, but it must be a creative attitude that new ideas must be formed, new concepts, new techniques, new daring thoughts, new algorithms, new ways of attacking math problems. So it's that point on creative thinking, whether in the sciences or the arts, that's important. And that one, I would say, is very difficult to get in any Filipino school today. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I think every just very quick, sorry, I think every child who goes to school should learn about the history of the culture in their country
Yes.
and in the rest of the world. They should not be allowed to leave school until they have the bare bones of how different people around the world have got their own culture. Sorry.
Yeah, and I was going to add, one of the challenges also, I think, especially with creative education, creative thinking, is that it's something so ingrained in our culture as a Filipino that we're very polite, very, like we were saying earlier, a bit, very respectful in the sense that it's sometimes we feel that if we try to push boundaries, is that we are overstepping or we are being rude. And that's something that is difficult because that's how I think we were all educated. We were all educated to sit down, listen, and obey.
Yeah.
And that's something that it's even in us trying to train our teachers of how we want to deliver the education, it's also challenging because some of the teachers are like, what? And the way, like I say, we do a lot of critique. Like critique is very important, but in the Filipino atmosphere, they see critique as an attack.
Yes.
They see critique as
Right.
something that is, oh, you're hurting me.
Yeah.
So we sort of had to, we have to tell the students, no, a critique is a way to understand. Don't take it as it's an insult. And
Yes.
that's something that we've been trying to change.
So we're going to wrap up in a little bit, but I have a question from social media that I want to ask each one of you. So the question is, how do you convince traditional parents to change their mindset and be open for their children to take creative careers seriously? So let's start with Amina, since you're on a roll.
How to convince parents? Well, yeah, that is our main challenge also. But I think it's really a matter also of making them understand what the power of creativity. That without all these creative people, there won't be anything new in the world. There won't be any no innovation. There won't be any progress. So for us, it's really in a way also of we sort of try to look at certain creative icons, and that's when we go to school. When we have parents that visit schools, we try to show them about these creative icons and how they've transformed the way humans live, and that the next creative icon that will really change the way we live, or the next generation, could be one of your kids.
Thank you.
But it's really it's really endemic na parang arts are inferior to the sciences in the Philippines. In fact, it's they call it like racket mentality in the Philippines. Like, I'm a musician, but I have a day job. I'm a filmmaker, but when I'm not doing a film, I'm doing this. And I remember even my dad was like, when are you getting a real job? And I'm like, I made 5 movies already.
Yes, but when are you getting a real job?
when am I getting a what? So I took my MBA. Anyway, but it's kind of, you really need to just prove yourself. I mean, what inspires me about a lot of the young students now is that they're very collaborative, and there's like Logic Club and all of these collectives, and it's not just about like rising by yourself anymore, but kind of as a group. And I think as long as you keep like movements going, I think movements are super important, especially in our history of art. I think eventually you'll reach that point where you can kind of prove that yes, there is a future, that there is a possibility to make it sustainable.
Thank you. And John?
You show your parents. I have no children, so I'm able to say this. You show your parents that you can have a very happy, successful, rich life in the creative industries. Yeah. And if your parents get it, that's great. If they don't get it, I'm sorry, you leave home. And you just do it. You don't. If you've got the passion, and without the passion, it won't work. Yeah. If you've got the passion, do not wait to be given permission. Go and do it.
Yes. Strong words, fighting words. And finally, Paolo?
I'll be medyo mahugot. So everybody can learn to make a living, but creative people make life worth living. They bring the excitement, the passion, the energy, the color into not only their own lives, but they'll bring it into their environment, their communities, their cities. And perhaps maybe the one that will take for Filipino parents is that you can be somebody who works a 9-to-5 corporate job, but at the end of it, when you retire, you're forgotten. Creative people leave a mark, and they leave a legacy because they change everything that they touch. And that's worth more than just making ends, than just making money. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And for our parting thoughts, I would like to ask John, since you are the person who coined the term, do you have any last-minute advice for our college-aged viewers?
All I can say is that I parachuted into Manila and met some lovely people, and I want to come back. And I think the potential here and the people that I've met here show very bright prospects. And I'm just sort of turning in my mind how we're going to realize those prospects. Yeah. And I think, I don't know who's watching this, but I suspect there are people out there, they're going to be the people who are going to astonish the world. And that's really exciting.
Before I forget
Sure.
to plug, John is here, by the way, because he is co-developing an executive education program with the Asian Institute of Management. So we will be running short courses, programs, precisely to raise the game for Filipino creative entrepreneurs or creators to level up to international competitiveness.
It'll be creative and businesslike.
Yes.
Excellent. So for a quick recap of what we've discussed, I see 3 points. The first is that we should take a chance. If there is something we are passionate about, we should go out of our way to chase it. And for the more conservative culture here in the Philippines, we should try to be a little more open, because without that, we won't really be like burgeoning here in this area of the world. And finally, the importance is there should be importance in practicing your art or your passion, as opposed to just miring yourself in theory. It's really about doing something every day for the rest of your life, basically.
It's fun.
Yeah. So thank you very much to our speakers. This was a great discussion. For the audience, please tune in tomorrow at 4 p.m. for our final roundtable series. So tomorrow, the topic will be, does Philippine education need rebooting? So yeah, we'd like to thank our partner Accenture. And thanks also to LBPI Design International and Indie Events for our awesome setup today. I'm Margaret De Leon. Thank you for watching.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
What's the power of AI? What if it could put an end to all the mouse clicks and keystrokes and make room for people to create? What if it could close the pay gap between genders by turning bias into equality? What if it could help the blind achieve more by using sound to give them sight? What if it could help cruise ships become more clairvoyant and car makers be more collaborative? What if a single collaboration between humans, birds, and AI could lead to conservation? What's the power of AI? It's infinite. But it has no perspective of its own, no point of view, no purpose, until people put it in motion, turning imagination into reality. Accenture. New. Applied now.